Bob Branch and David Williams ran this series of charters over about 12, 13 days, almost 15 really. So it was almost like a two-week foreign trip. And we start off with the Welsh Highland Railway, where they had the K1 Garrett back. It's normally at Statfold Barn. And this is the K1 Garrett with an NG16, I think they are, South African Garrett behind. Is everybody with me? Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great then. So Welsh Highland Railway, and when you take the things off, it gets a bit lighter. But yeah, this is what's it called? Forgotten the name of the station there. Top of the hill on the Welsh Highland. Rhydd, that's right. The K1 Garrett, very boxy front end, used to be in Tasmania, was returned as bits of K1 and K2, was reconstructed by Bear Peacock, and eventually went to the Welsh Highland, and Statfold Barn normally has it now, having restored it. This was the end of that particular day. This is the South African Garrett, the same setting. It was a popular spot. We stopped there most days on the Welsh Highland. It's a former sort of sea wall near to Port Maddock. The next morning we had a double fairly out on the Welsh Highland. This is approaching Nantmore. This is looking back from near Nantmore down the track. And I just wanted to show you, I briefly volunteered to relay the track on this line. And so I've got a few shots of what it looked like back in about 2009, I think it was, 2007, sorry. That was before the track got put back. The professional contractors were doing the bit ahead. They'd put, I think they probably even got to the point of putting ballast down, and then the volunteers came in to lay the track. That's the bridge, which had been put back there on the section leading up to the Aberglaslyn Pass. When a large number of volunteers, and it was a question of trying to find out what role you had, and I ended up on the gang that went off to collect new rail. And this particular Simplex loco and this set was used to go and collect rail. Here we are with some rail in tow, running through the tunnels at Aberglaslyn. And there we're delivering some rail to the head of steel. This was returning home at the end of the day over the new bridge at the end of the Aberglaslyn Pass, leading to Bethgelert. On our particular charter, this was a fairly rather stretched photo at this point. It's sort of lacking definition. Light was bad. The weather wasn't great this day. This is over the same bridge we saw before, coming out the Aberglaslyn Pass. And these two shots are in the pass. Somebody fell into the river that day. Probably happens every trip. They were trying to, possibly the chap on the right there in this photo. Can you see that? You see that chap there? I don't know if you can see my cursor. Anyway, somebody fell into the river on the other side. The weather got worse. Here we have the K1 and South African Garrett. And that was the end of that day. We had a chill out day at the end of it all. And here we have Bob Branch talking to Paul Lewin. Paul Lewin was, who is the manager of the Welsh Highland Festiniog, was driving us over to the Snowdonia Park Brew Pub for a lunch. This is leaving Porthmadog. This shows the crossing with the Network Rail. Network Rail was closed down for repairs to the Barmouth Bridge, I believe, but even still, they still had possession, basically. Somebody had to be in charge to allow our narrow gauge train across. That's going through Dampball. These are shot from the back of the train. But the front of the train, I never got to the front of the train, was the luxury Pullman coach. And this is taking water at Bethgelert. The loco is reproduction of one of the Linton and Barnstable locos, Lid, which is part owned by Paul Lewin, who was driving. And that's a sign to me that we're now moving on. We're moving on to the Bala Lake Railway. This railway, built on a former standard gauge track bed, is in the area of Bala, and they are planning to get back to Bala itself in the next few years. Their main station is this very difficult to pronounce, Lanu Wuchlin. We had 2 locos. Both of them Quarry Hunslets. This is George B. with some slate wagons behind. This is George B. and the front of Ivor Peters Bentley, which is now owned by Julian Beerley, who is a driving force in this railway. Julian is in the front of his vehicle, and that's Bernd Seiler, German tour operator, in the back. Winifred, Julian Beerley got this back from the US. It was in the Cincinnati Speedway, where it had been sort of shut up for many years, having been sent to the States, you know, as it bought up when the quarries closed. So that's a repatriated loco. Don't know the history of George B so much, but we had those 2 locos in use. The strange concrete you see in the front was a former platform that got washed away in some flood from the Bala Lake. The railway has a collection of other locos in a museum. This particular sign shows their fleet, but in their museum they have Triassic. That's a sister to Jurassic, which we have on our local railway. Liassic, which is at Statfold Barn. This is Triassic. The 4th survivor is in bits at Bromsgrove. This one, the owner has been traced and is still deciding what to do with it, but it's in the museum at the Bala Lake Railway. They have Nestor, which was lost in a swamp in Puerto Rico, I believe, and recovered. And then Dorothy, which is a former, I've got some notes on this one. It's a bagnall, and it was once at a Blaenau Festiniog, one of the slate quarries there. These are, you know, restoration projects for the railway. And that was the end of the Bala Lake. We then moved on to the Vale of Rheidol. This is a railway I have not really visited in the past. They have these boxy tank locos. Number 7 and 8 are back in use, and number 9 may be in use next year. They went from British Rail to being sold off. They were the last British Rail steam locos, effectively, lasting well beyond the standard steam locos, standard gauge steam locos. We had the 2 tank locos from the line in use the first day. One was on a passenger, our passenger, and one was on a freight. We went to a trestle bridge just out of Aberystwyth for the first shots. We didn't have great weather either day. The first day was better than the second, but the line has potential. They have some nice old signals, decent countryside. They're very supportive of charters. When into the hilly section, it gets quite interesting. Some potentials from the hillside, but I think the rain is visible in that one and probably the next picture. I think it was raining at the time. Autumn scenery. I was introduced to this place as a cardiac mountain or cardiac hill. You have to climb up quite high from trackside, but the railway on the ledge coming round the corner, this is a classic shot in anybody's book. So if you can arrange charters around here and get some decent weather, then yeah, the world's your oyster. That one's been treated a bit to enhance the color. And shortly after that, you get to Devil's Bridge. We had some night shots down at Aberystwyth. And then the next day, we had their newly restored South African Garret, NGG16. It's been named Drakensberg. I think it was named that in Switzerland or wherever it was before. They've decided to keep the name as being appropriate to the mountainous Vale of Rheidol. We had a double-headed passenger with the 2 line locos and then the Garret on a freight. The weather got increasingly bad, but before it totally crapped out, we managed a few shots out in the countryside. Interesting that unlike the Welsh Highland, where they can't have seats that swing out, the Garret seats can semi-swing out here, so at least they get a clear view of the line ahead. There's the double-headed Vale of Rheidol locos. This was a point where we met up again, by which point the weather was getting worse. And we skipped the cardiac hill shots because there was no weather to be had at all. We ended up at Devil's Bridge, and this was the end of the trip. There will be another Welsh Narrow Gauge Extravaganza, October, November 2022. I have no connection to this, no commercial interest, but you can view the brochure for the 2022 tour. It's actually on my Google Drive, But if you use that link, which is tinyurl.com/5N6HUFZ2, if you want to note that down, if you use that link, you can actually view the brochure. And if you do contact Bob or David, mention my name, it can't hurt. It will be another interesting trip, about 12 to 13 days in October, November next year. And that is the end of my presentation.